to some degree, there's an argument that why people become anarchists is that anarchism is everywhere and people have always been anarchists, or at their best are sort of anarchistic. But to some degree, like, I get that argument. But when I realized it wasn't just these sort of feelings that I'd had or intuitions, but that there was a whole body, a tradition, a practice, and social struggles and wonderful experiments that people had done, to some degree that's what helped me become an anarchist, because I understood there was a word for a lot of the sort of feelings and politics I've been trying to do. But personally, I think why I became an anarchist and actually still feel proud to identify as an anarchist a long time later, is that unlike any other political tradition or philosophy, anarchism isn't perfect. No political ideology or philosophy is perfect. But it seems to me that it's the one philosophy that really is a philosophy of freedom, that really grasps what to me is essential about any kind of political philosophy or political practice, is the question of power. And I don't think that you can ever get rid of power. To me, there are different forms of power. So we can have all sorts of forms of power where some small group of people or a single person or single entity has power over, for hatred, for coercion, for gain. But there's all sorts of other wonderful forms of power, which is the power I think we are striving for, is to feel our own sense of power of who we want to become and how we want our communities to look and how we can have power together to shape things for meeting our needs and our desires, for becoming who we each want to be, toward creating an ecological world. The power that gives us things to create and imagine, and what's kind of best about what makes us human. Our ability to imagine something that is about all of us being able to feel as much as who we want to be in a world, but also consensually create communities together, and what's the balance between the two. And to me, anarchism gets at most the question of, if we actually want to make sure everybody has power to be who they want to be in communities that are really truly free, both free people in a free society, the only way to get at that is to give everybody sort of the same piece of power, sort of a horizontal sense of power. And because anarchism to me ultimately translates into a sense of a society without hierarchy, or without top-down forms of power, without the power of someone to oppress or coerce someone else, is that anarchism most gets at a vision of a society. Now, will we ever get to a society where everybody's acting that way is a different question, but is that the right thing to do in moments or areas or regions, or to make it more commonplace, that we think first to cooperate instead of compete. Right now, I think is most detrimental, for instance, about capitalism, and what made me an anarchist to some degree too, is under capitalism, we have these things that feel almost natural. Our impulses is to want to compete or want to have self-interest as opposed to sort of the common good. But I would hope that more anarchistic society would flip around our values and have us think first, well, how would cooperation make me feel more human and more part of a community that feels good? So yeah, for me, I think anarchism, the question of power, it addresses it best in a way that is about giving everybody power together to determine what they want their lives to be together, in the aim of freedom, and that freedom will become larger over time the more we have the spaces and places to debate it and practice it and implement it together in horizontal ways. Yeah. And the other reason I think I became very personal with anarchism is when you actually practice it, it's like this moment where you're doing something that with other people, where you create something almost out of nothing because you want it to be there, and it sort of defies the logic of what society wants you to think. It's about people like really highly participating or acting face-to-face directly democratically to decide things together, or creating something that wasn't there because we're all together, and the sense of empowerment that you feel in that, where you feel more who you've ever wanted to be than you ever have before, and when you see yourself reflected back in how we all together have created something, it's like this funny moment where you begin to imagine what you could be like in a different world. And I think for me with anarchism is once you kind of really grab onto it and understand yourself as an anarchist, you try to make the whole of your life, each moment, feel more and more like these really accentuated, wonderful, articulated moments of really finding your own power, your own voice, your own passions, your own desires with other people, and creating things that you can only begin to imagine how good they could be. But that's what's beautiful about being anarchist to me too, is it becomes sort of like remaking the whole of your life in ways as much as you can. within this present society, knowing that those are always intentional with how awful it is right now. And I think that's almost what keeps me going, is seeing that tension between what could be and what is, and knowing that anarchism is pointing past that. So yeah, all those reasons kind of drew me to anarchism.